So hi there, folks. I usually try to make the videos that I put on YouTube about accessibility as easy to understand as possible. We had a request recently using the app Avaz, which supports multiple languages, French, English, Spanish, etc., of how to use switch scanning to place diacritics, meaning accents, essentially, like the flip up, the flip back, the umlaut above the U in some languages. And it turns out with switches, that's actually not an easy thing to do. So I spent some time puzzling over the question and figured out how to do it using a combination of different switch access modalities that will be successful for this student. But I just want to warn you ahead of time that unless you need to dive real deep, I would probably stop watching now because it's going to get pretty technical. Recording a video for you here at 3:34 in the morning because I'm a notorious insomniac, so hopefully I make sense here. But I have been experimenting and I did figure out how to do this. So let me first show you in the settings what would need to be done. And the actual process of setting it up is not as bad as the execution. I have had this weird technical difficulty where I'm having trouble with all my switches right now. All of my good ones are out on loan to students. So what I've done here is I've set up a head movement switch process, which is kind of funny because I'm dancing around the house, moving my head in different directions, but that's okay. It's kind of fun. So as I'm sure you know, I'm going into general and then accessibility and then switch control. So there's a few things that are specific to what we're doing here. And they really do have to be exactly like this in order for it to work appropriately. So for me, the switches are set up as left head movement is moving to the next item, similar to the head switch you discussed. And then right head movement is going to make a selection. With the switches that you have, depending on what exactly they are, they should be relatively simple to set up with iOS if you have the correct adapter for a Lightning port or if they're Bluetooth. We don't need to make any recipes, which was what I was afraid of. That's what I thought we needed to do, is create some sort of custom interactions, but we don't. We do need to go with manual scanning instead of auto scanning, which is probably appropriate anyway. So you use a switch to advance through the different sections instead of having it do it for you. Move repeat, I found this to be useful. So since we're going through different sections, having it move through while the switch remains pressed instead of doing a really quick motion seems to be useful. And then also having a long press, so you have a little bit longer time to activate it. I don't know if that fits the motor profile of the student that you're working with. Certainly that's something that I've seen a lot with kids that I work with. Tap behavior, there's a few different options here, but we're going with default. Auto tap and always tap are just way too quick. It would make selections way too fast. Focused item after tap is just kind of silly. Basically, it's asking once you get into a group, like a list of items, whether you want to just choose the first one or choose the one that you specify. So I'm not even sure why they would select that. And then always tapping keyboard keys is actually kind of irrelevant here because the Avaz keyboard actually is not an Apple keyboard, meaning that it wouldn't work with that. A lot of these things are specific to what I'm doing. So the head movement sensitivity is set to high. The gliding cursor speed, just take note that it's set to 30 right now because that'll come up again in a minute. And then I just pretty much have everything else turned off. We don't need save gestures or those sorts of things. Same as the whatever they were called earlier, the recipes. And then grouping items is important. Just because you want to be able to move through categories quickly, which I'll show you in a moment. And then menu items we should quickly comment on. There's a whole bunch of different controls that you can enable. So, you could have double tap, pan, pinch, tap, using Siri, editing operations, escaping things. A lot of that really isn't feasible for a two-switch situation. But there are some that are important here. So we want to make sure that item and point mode are enabled, and I'll show you what that is in a moment. We want to make sure that element-specific actions are enabled because that's what's going to allow us to pull up the diacritics on each letter. And then also in, nope, not that one. Again, sorry, tired. In device, we want to be able to do tap and hold. So again, that's going to enable us to pull things up, just like in the app if you were to hold it down with your finger, one of the letters. Okay, so now it's time for me to bounce around with my head here and see what we can do. So I'm going to pull up Avaz Français, and oh, before I do that, I better turn on the switches, eh? I'm not always this tired. Alright, so I'm actually relaunching here. It turns out that flailing my head around is not quite as easy as a switch, but what I'm doing is moving my head to the left to simulate a switch. Now what I'm going to do is try to get to this eye here and then select it, and you can see that once again if I hit the left switch essentially I can tap and hold, and now all of a sudden we've got all these nice beautiful diacritics there. So what I'm going to do is start scanning again. But see how now it's saying out in the upper right point mode? That's what I want to select. And this is where things get kind of hard, unfortunately. Again, I'm trying to, okay, here we go. So as soon as this gets by the one that I want, I'm going to try to use the left switch. I want to wait for it to come back here. And then hit the left switch again. And we are going to go ahead and tap on it. There we go. So we've got this nice beautiful letter up there. So really there's sort of multiple modalities that we're using, and I'm just going to let this thing go here. So we have a tap option, which is activated just easily enough by the right mouse, or excuse me, the right switch. We have the tap and hold button, which would be activated by a combination of the left and then the right switch. And then we have this, you know, sort of rotating bar grid piece here, which unfortunately is the best way to do it. And that's not a function of Avaz, that's the way that Apple has designed their accessibility. As I pointed out in the settings earlier, you can adjust the speed of this, either faster or slower, to make it easier. But essentially what you would do is keep scrolling through the options with the right switch when you have the tap or hold, and this will eventually come up. And then as I showed you in the settings for accessibility and for switches, there's a whole ton of other menu options that you can add there. You know, a lot of stuff I don't think people would even really use, like, you know, but conceivably. Some of them allow you to scroll down in books and other things. So what you can do in those situations is actually build profiles for different activities. But this is the way to do it in terms of actually getting some accented letters in Avaz. And this is not just Avaz. This would be true in ProLocal to Go or, you know, any of these, if they even bother to have accents, which to my knowledge only a handful do. So I hope that's helpful. I'm sorry I'm not entirely awake, but please feel free to email me if you have any questions, and it's luke@lukestuber.com. Well, you've been copied on emails with me, and I'm happy to answer them. And thank you very much for answering or for asking this question, because I've never actually figured this out before. So here we go. I'm learning something new.